So you are watching Mom Hive. This is a space where I am lucky enough to talk to a bunch of badass moms about the trials and tribulations of parenthood, how we balance none of it. And I'm so excited to have you all here. I'm Anjelika Temple. I am your host. I'm an artist, an entrepreneur, and the mom to two kiddos who are 2 and 4. And I'm so excited about our guest today. Oh no, it said she's unable to join again. Let me try one more time here. I'll try a few more times. We are going to make this thing happen, people. So,
Hey. I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I can't now.
Oh no.
How are you?
Oh, I am so happy you're here. So now that we're officially and we are together, start the show. Welcome to Hive. I am your host, Anjelika Temple. I already introduced myself to some of you. And I'm so thrilled to have Destini Ann, also known as @Manifest Destiny, which has to be one of the best Instagram TikToker. She is a former educator and peaceful parenting pro. Destiny also hosts a very own series on Bubble called Ask Destiny, where she answers questions about tricky toddlers, exasperated teenagers, and more. So get out. And this is all happening here on @OBubble. Bubble is all about parenting and the craziness. So let's kick things off. Destiny, can you start by telling us a little bit more about your kiddos, Kennedy and Pete?
Yeah, you're actually going in and out a little bit. I just hope it's not just my headphones. But my kids are 9 and 3. Kennedy just turned 9 in August. And then Phoenix is going to be 4 in October.
Amazing. And can you tell me a little bit more about their personalities? Like, how do they, because I have a for what if I go like, is that better?
Okay, try now.
Okay, how about now?
Yes, I can hear you now, yes.
You can hear me now? Well, that means I have to hold it the whole time. That's insane.
Oh, because it was propped up?
It was propped up. And for some reason, my headphones are not connecting. Okay, you talk while I figure out my audio.
Okay,
so tell me a little bit more about the kids.
Yeah, so they are typical first child, second child dynamic. So the first one is she's loud, she's very free-willed, she lives up to her name, she is a firebird. So they are complete opposite sisters.
That's amazing. And how do they get along with each other?
Like siblings.
Yeah.
They get along like siblings. Sometimes they're either the best of friends or sometimes they get on each other's nerves. They love each other though. They really, really do. They're always all over each other. And I think that that's probably why they get on each other's nerves.
Yes. I mean, that is, I think my 2-year-old's third word after mama and dada was space.
Really?
Because our 4-year-old, she just wants to snuggle on her. She wants to hug her all the time. And so we had to say, there are different ways you can show love. Indira needs space, but she likes to copy everything you do and steal your toys. Yep. And that's how she shows love.
Exactly. Yeah. The younger one loves to be all over the older one. And sometimes the older one needs a space break.
Oh, yeah. So I know your whole thing is all around peaceful parenting, which as parents, we all need way more peace in our lives. Can you tell me a little bit more about what peaceful parenting means to you?
Yeah, well, I know it means a lot of different things to a lot of people, but for me, peaceful parenting is about taking force and control out of parenting and collaborating with your kids and kind of releasing that ego side of parenting. Mm-hmm. That a lot of us, most of us come into parenting with this idea that our kids are here to complete us or, assimilate to our lives. And I think that that's what's most important to me. And that's what resonated the most about peaceful parenting was that it's not about persuading your kid or forcing your kid or having control over your kid.
Had you sort of heard of peaceful parenting before becoming a parent, or is it something, that you discovered in the midst of tantrums and all sorts of stuff?
Right. Yeah, no, I absolutely knew nothing about peaceful parenting. I knew what I knew, how I was raised. And as my daughter was getting older and we were starting to have disconnects, I started to, lean on my background in psychology in terms of development, but I didn't have any tools. And so I started reading books, and that's when I was introduced to Dr. Laura Markham in her book, what is it? Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids.
Yes.
And that's where I was introduced to peaceful parenting.
What are the key principles of peaceful parenting? And what are the tools that you feel like you need to work on yourself to be able to be a peaceful parent? And I mean, I ask that, of course, that's on our list of questions, but also I feel like being a parent has, especially now with 2 kids and the older kid being 4.5, I'm unpacking so much about what I need and like how I need to be communicated with. So I would just love to hear you sort of ramble on a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have my own personal tenets to peaceful parenting that I've kind of compiled. And I think that the first one is connection, which is the one that I don't struggle with at all. I'm very affectionate with my kids. And then, of course, compassion and just that understanding and that empathy with them. Consideration, considering as many things as you can before you make a decision and not just assuming that it's innate or that we always know what we're doing. And then lastly, the most important part, I think, is collaboration. And it goes back to not forcing and problem solving with your kids, it being about you against a problem as opposed to you against your child. And so out of those 4, I would say that the compassion part has probably been the most difficult when I'm triggered, and you have to. So it was a lot easier when it was just me and my oldest, but now, there's so many personalities and we're all triggered, and the 3-year-old is upset about something that the 9-year-old did, and the 9-year-old is upset about something I did, and I'm upset about something my friend did, and we're just all trying to have compassion for each other. And I think that piece sometimes is what I struggle with the most.
Oh my gosh, that is huge. Actually, I think that I didn't feel the sort of, I know it's been called maternal rage. It's pretty universal. I don't feel like I experienced it until I had 2. And that idea of compassion for yourself and for everyone is just so important, because I think anytime something goes wrong, like someone has a tantrum about something or something was in the wrong place, I like completely go into a guilt spiral, and I'm like, oh, if only I had done carrots instead of sliced apples today, like we wouldn't be having this meltdown, and you just go into this whole thing where it's like, you can't optimize everything. Like you can do your best and your kids can roll with it and you can roll with it. And some days they like carrots and some days they hate them, and it's okay. But I do feel like I'm always like, oh, how could I have worked against this? Like, how could I have not made this blow up happen?
Well, and I think too that what we struggle with the most in our parenting a lot of times is what we struggle with the most in our relationships with ourselves. And I am the same exact way. If I make a mistake or if something flusters me and I don't get it right, so to speak, it's very difficult for me to have that compassion for myself. And so that translates into the parenting dynamic for sure.
Yep. So, going along with that, obviously self-care is a huge part of this, right? And making sure that you're continuing to grow personally and as a parent. What does self-care look like for you? And how do you feel like it positively impacts the household?
Yeah, so it just basically goes back to what we were talking about. And from a spiritual sense, I really do think that what's going on internally is what's impacting what's happening on the outside. But just in a practical sense, the things that we practice are what show up. And so if I'm practicing having compassion with myself, if I'm practicing being connected in solitude and finding, solutions, if I'm practicing considering things in my own life, then it's just naturally going to flow when my kids are around. And so for me, I think that that's why self-care is important. I get questions all the time, like, how are you able to be peaceful in the moment? And how are you able to do this? And it literally is practice. And you practice those relationships with the first relationship that you have, which is your relationship with yourself.
Yeah, I think we don't not do timeouts. We don't call them timeouts. We do resets where you take 5 or 10 deep breaths and then come back when you're ready to share, or come back when you're ready to listen, or whatever it is. And it's so funny because I do resets. Like, I need a reset. Like, I'm like, mama needs to go take 10 deep breaths. And I honestly like hadn't even ever done that before or even considered it until, having to like teach mindfulness and sort of like these reset moments to kids. But that's also in times of conflict. So tell me a little bit more about how you maintain peaceful energy when things are going right. Like, how do you encourage it instead of it just being how you handle strife?
Gotcha. So I think that I've always, ever since I started this journey, I've heard a lot about like meeting needs. And a lot of times when our kids' needs aren't met, that's when the tantrums come, or that's when the disconnect comes. And I've been learning a lot about our most basic need, which is safety. And so I feel like outside of disciplinary moments or outside of high stress moments when we're in that fight or flight, it's important to reinforce that safety. And so safety with themselves and then safety in their environment. So reinforcing who they are and celebrating who they are is important so that they can feel safe in themselves. But then also, having consistency with the safety that I provide them, I think is really important so that when we have those moments, we can move through compassion and collaboration and all of those things a lot more smoothly because, again, we've practiced that safety. And I think we don't give enough credit to what's going on in our brains when we have those moments. And a lot of times it really is just like that basic, we're triggered, that fight or flight kind of thing. And I think the more that we practice safety outside of the moment, the quicker we can return. Those 10 deep breaths, those wouldn't work for everybody because a lot of times outside of the moment we're in survival mode, or maybe they don't have that safety. And so I have conversations with parents who are like, that wouldn't work for my kid, and I'm like, because they're conditioned to not feel safe in themselves, or they're conditioned to not feel safe with you. So it really starts outside of the moment. It really does in meeting that basic need.
Yeah, this is like, you are speaking my language right now. So we just traveled for 3 weeks, like seeing relatives we haven't seen, and then came back to a tough version of our 4-year-old because, she had been in like 10 different places in a 3-week period. So she's of course feeling unsafe. Like, where's her routine? And, that results in her looking for a lot of negative attention, acting out, waking up in the night. And I'm like, wait, you're 4.5. Like, I'm not sleep training you. It's done. I did it. Like,
oh, that's Phoenix to T.
Oh my gosh. It's like so insane. But, what I always try to say is, like, my job is to teach you how to take care of, like, to keep you safe, but also teach you how to sleep in your room on your own, and like all of these things. And it's always about like, safe, healthy, and loved are the 3 things we talk about all the time in our house, because it's like, that's what's most important. And she always likes to add things like, and ice cream. But yeah, what advice do you have for kids who are, this is very direct to me, who are going through like that type of regression, and there's, everything is safe, everything is predictable, and you're in your routine, what are ways that you sort of, what are some language to help them like feel settled again?
To help the child?
Yeah.
So I honestly feel like it goes back into the collaboration piece, and that there really is no right language and there's no right answer. And a lot of times our kids know their truth a lot more than we do. And so I say that to a lot of parents in my community, is that your child probably has the answer a lot better than I do.
Yeah.
And in times where our kids can't articulate or something, I think it comes back to the connection piece. And it might be a time to be spending more time with your child, if that's possible, so that you can pick up on those cues, because all of us have things individually that return ourselves back to safety. Internally, we have those things that help us come back to safety, and it's going to be different for every adult, just like it's different for every child. And sometimes I think that it requires us to stop the routines, stop the cooking, take a pause, and really assess, what does my child need in this moment? because you could have the right language and it be the wrong language tomorrow.
Right. I mean, it is always changing.
But that's I think that's the beauty of it. And I think that goes back to what you were saying in the beginning, is that you can't like line up the perfect circumstances.
Yeah.
Because the perfect circumstances for your child today may not necessarily be what they need in order to feel safe tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so it's just about showing up with openness.
Yep.
Taking that consideration. Can I consider what's going on in this moment with my child? And then in the times where you're not available for it, being able to consider that and that being okay, and being able to express that to your child, because you have to feel safe too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we talk a lot about first reactions. Like, take a moment. And I love the idea of thinking about consideration and really bringing that into it. How would you say your parenting style has evolved?
Oh, man.
And continues to evolve, I'm sure.
Oh, God. Well, I had my first at 19, so yeah, it's evolved a lot. I joke, but the truth is that I really was not parenting when I first had my 9-year-old.
You were like a whole different person.
Yeah, I wasn't an adult. So there were so many things that I wasn't responsible for. And so in a way, I'm a silver linings kind of person. And so I can look at it in the sense that we really got to build connection, because that's really all that I had to offer was like fun mom vibes. Mm-hmm. So that was that. There was no limit setting. There were no boundaries. None of that stuff. There were no routines. I feel like I missed out on, giving my child safety in that way. Mm-hmm. So I think that has evolved a lot, because I saw how that was negatively impacting her. And so we kind of transitioned from, okay, there are no limits, to now there are limits. And even in between that, I was like, I went the complete opposite. There were no limits, and now I'm making all the limits. And now we've kind of found this blend where it's like, okay, there are limits, but we collaborate on creating those limits.
Are there specific parenting tools or practices that you've changed your mind on recently? Just thinking about how that evolution has happened. Are there things that you saw done or did before that you totally wouldn't do, or, things that you've brought into your parenting style?
Oh gosh. Yeah. So I've always, ironically that you said that earlier, I've always been against the idea of timeout since I was a teacher. Yeah. So I was a kindergarten teacher, in the traditional sense, obviously not a space break or I need a breath or anything like that. But recently I've been doing a lot of research on the opposite and how rewards can actually negatively impact our children. Mm-hmm. And I've always kind of felt that even in our homeschooling, like I pulled her out. We don't do grades and we don't do grade level and all of that. But just seeing that it really isn't different. It's just the opposite side of the same coin in terms of punishments, and how if children have an association with I should or shouldn't do this because I'll get punished, it can also be a negative thing if a child feels like I should or shouldn't do this because I'll get rewarded for it. Mm-hmm. And so I've really been kind of trying to dig through that, because I'm like a positive affirmation person and and all of that, and understanding that I can still do those things, but if I'm not intentional about reminding my child of her value outside of what she's doing, then that could have just as negative of an impact as me punishing her for her behavior.
Oh my gosh, this is like, it's so tricky, because like with going back to my daughter waking up in the night as a 4-year-old, when she doesn't, I'm like, you did it. And in my head, I'm thinking, I am congratulating her for like basic behavior, like basic human being, Right. And I'm like, I'm throwing a huge party because she slept through the night. But it's so hard, because it's like, she can't be in trouble in the middle of the night. Right. Like in the middle of the night when she wakes up scared, she's not in trouble. It's just like, hey, it's the middle of the night, And so the reward thing is like so tricky with the positive affirmations and all of that, because it's just like, I think one of the things that someone told me, it was actually my pediatrician, is at one point when she was 3 and sort of first started a little bit of like the negative attention acting out, the advice she gave was, you can't have too many rules. Like you should not have a million rules. It can't be, you can't do this, you can't do that. So my husband and I were like, okay. So we realized, obviously, things that have to be safe, it has to be healthy, etc. But everything always comes back to listening. You're not in trouble because you did this, because you dropped something or you threw something. You're in trouble because you didn't listen, like, you know, and things like that. And that's been really helpful because you can sort of root things in just a few sort of like ideas in your house. Like, these are the principles of our household, you know, we listen, we share, we're kind, you know, and so on. And that's been so helpful for me in terms of like practices.
Oh, the rules thing is just, I'm not even a rules kind of person. So that would not work in my house, but my kids know, like, we call them our non-negotiables, and they've been that for a very long time. And even with that, I still take things into consideration sometimes. You know, I mean, for instance, like, let's see, I know, well, our non-negotiables are kindness, safety, and hygiene. And so I'm not going to pick my child up if she had a longer gymnastics practice. I'm not going to, you know, force her like, hey, you didn't brush your teeth. You need to get up right this second. You know, so it's always negotiable to a sense. Right. I think that it's important that they understand that these are expectations that we don't negotiate unless there are extenuating circumstances. And I keep them so minimal. That's literally it. They will regurgitate those three things. And outside of that, we can talk about it. I have time to talk about it because their needs and their safety matters the same way that mine matters. And I think that the more that I do this with this career that I'm building, the more that I see that it's like all parents are focused on is behavior modification. And that makes me so sad because our kids' behaviors are pointing to something. And it's almost like, let's fix all these symptoms and not get to the root. I think it's feelings are a big thing at my daughter's preschool. So it's always like, she's always expressing, you know, like, this happened and this hurt my feelings. And so I do it too. You know, if I'm frustrated, like, I'll say, you know, I'm starting to feel frustrated because you're not listening, and it hurts my feelings when you don't listen, when I'm trying, you know, when I'm trying to do something fun or whatever. But like, I understand this might not be fun for you, so let's talk. But it's like, you know, it's so many words and so much stuff that so many words. I always joke that it takes me like 3 paragraphs to say no about something, like, or to say like, don't do that. But I think it's good, right? Because she's learning, and then there are certain things when you know she knows the thing, you don't need to do the 3 paragraphs. It's like, hey, you know this, like, you know, exactly.
And like, assuming their intelligence is like, you know, if you're repeating, don't whine, or, you know, all the time, or I can't understand you, can you use your Inoki voice all the time? You can sort of make a joke of it, and they're like, this is ridiculous, isn't it?
But it's so true that the more that you do it, you know, the less time that it takes to do it.
Exactly.
But all parenting strategies to a certain extent, take a long time. And I think, can take a long time. And I think what we have to remember is that our actions may not take a long time if we go to those lower level, like punishments and stuff like that. But the amount of time that it resonates with the child, and then they're going to come back and repeat the behavior. Right. Like, it's like, it could have took 3 minutes for you to explain, but instead it took 3 years for them to get through. Oh my God. Like, in that way, it's like, does it really, you know, and all of the repairing that you have to now do to the relationship. And it's like, it's so funny to me. A lot of times I see this picture in my head of parents where it's like a toddler kind of like stomping, like, no, it's going to be this way. It has to be this way. And why can't we drop the ego and concede sometimes? As childish as it may seem, like, picking the battles is so important because we stand on things sometimes that just really don't even matter. Like, why can't she have the blue cup?
I know. Oh my gosh. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, like, what arbitrary fight is happening right now? Right. Like, just take the blue cup, take 10 cups. I don't care. Like,
right. Like, I brought the red one. Yeah. In life, sometimes you don't have choices. Yeah, but they do have a choice right now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so true.
I don't understand.
We only have a few more minutes, so I want to get a couple audience questions in, and then I'll do a quick rapid fire. So one of the questions we got when we posted this on stories yesterday, how do you separate having a bad day from being in mom mode, right? And not taking out your bad day, not taking it out on your kids, but sort of like not bringing it into the family time?
I wouldn't separate the two. I think that's a wonderful teaching moment, a wonderful connection moment. I grew up in a house where I thought my mom never had a bad day. And I think that I wish that I did. And what we don't realize is it's like either we're going to confront it or it's going to show up in a passive aggressive kind of way.
Right.
You know, kids are going to feel it either way. So I'd rather walk in the house and say, hey guys, I might not be available for special time today. It's not your fault. Mommy's dealing with some big feelings. And whenever I do that, a lot of times they dissipate on their own and I'm a lot more available than trying to mom through it or truck through it. So I personally don't hide bad days from my kids. I'm their guide and I'm their teacher, and they're not going to learn how to continue through their day when they're having a bad day if I'm like, try not to show that to them.
I love that answer. And I think that's so true. Whenever I feel like I remember the first time I like really let my guard down when Anoki was 2 or something, you know, and I was like, I'm having a hard time. I was super pregnant and she just flipped, like a switch flipped where it was like, she literally put her hand on my shoulder and she was 2. And she said like, she touched my nose because we always make a sound. Like we go like bonk or whatever. She was like, we're okay. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like it was just this moment though. And I realized, oh, like we're here to take care of each other. And, you know, yes, my job is absolutely to raise you. Right. But it was like a really moving moment that made me realize like when I show the full spectrum of emotions and feelings and days that you can have, it's good for everybody. Because then if she has a bad day at school, she can tell me. Yeah. You know, she doesn't have to, she can say like, I got in a fight with so-and-so and now we're not going to hang out for a day, which is what happened yesterday.
well, a lot of times emotions are reflective. Right. They really are. In the same way, when we're frustrated, our kids are frustrated. If you had compassion for yourself in that moment, you weren't being a bad mom because you were having a hard time. Your hormones might have been all over the place. You know, something might have happened and you had compassion for yourself in that moment to be able to say what it was. And she reflected that back to you. Yeah.
One more question, which is, how do you deal with drop-off meltdowns? This person has a 4-year-old and she is screaming, crying 4 out of 5 days a week at drop-off.
Oh,
I know.
Yeah. Okay. So Phoenix is a drop down meltdowner, and it's literally a different tool every single time. I think again, it goes back to safety. So it could be something. Sometimes I have to figure out what's going on at school, and work with the school to help her feel more comfortable. But then sometimes it is, you know, reminding her you're going to come back. A lot of times it's me being intentional about the transition. And so we'll build connection in the mornings before I'm dropping her off. Maybe it's going to take a second and you're going to have to get in the back seat, you know, and do something with her before you take her, or pick her up and hold her, you know, just something to rebuild that connection so that she feels safe. She understands I have mommy. She's going to come back and get me. But I think that basic need for safety is kind of in jeopardy when you leave them. So it's understandable, and you have to take that into consideration and find what works for your child to reinforce that safety. It's not about getting them to want to go per se. I think that's where the bribes come in, you know? Yeah. That's where the bribes are the punishments. If you don't go, then I'm going to take this. Or if you do go, you candy when you get home. And it's like, they don't need candy. They need safety. So whatever your child needs in that moment to reinforce that safety, again, it's going to be different every single day. But I think that focusing on that makes it a lot easier to do those kind of things.
I love that. Okay, I'm just going to do one more question here, which is, I'm skipping the rapid fire. It's already 12:30. What is the greatest gift or advice another parent has given you?
Oh, man. My mom. And not even intentionally, but it's kind of... She was so mindful and she didn't even know that she was mindful, but it's so simple. But she just would always say, just do what's right in front of you. It's kind of like the next right thing kind of thing. But it really taught me to just be present in the moment with my kids, because I can get, like, if we're doing homeschool and she's struggling with something, and then but then she's not gonna be able to do this and she's not gonna learn that, and this, and I'm gonna be a bad parent. And it's just like, we're on problem 6. Let's just get through problem 6. And I think that was the best piece of advice, parenting advice that I've ever gotten. Handle what's in front of you.
I love that so much. Destini, thank you so much for being our first guest on the live version of Mom Hive. And remember to tune in to Ask Destini on Bubble, and we'll be back with Mom Hive next week on Thursdays at noon. Thanks, everybody.